Hello, everybody. My name is Jimmy Weeks, and I am your host and moderator for Franchising 101. Get into business for yourself, but not by yourself. We're going to talk about why franchises are great for veterans and why us veterans are great for franchising. Where'd we go? There we go. I'd like to introduce Tifton Coleman and Kevin Scott, both from Office Pride. Tifton, why don't you give us a little intro, and then we'll hand it over to Kevin.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, welcome everybody. Appreciate you guys being here. And a little intro on me is I was a 5-year active duty Marine. I did 3 deployments. If any of you are Marines, then you know that the commandant does a great job of getting his use out of us for sure. So got to go see the world, and just really blessed to been able to do that. And I've been at Office Pride and in franchising for over 6 years now since exiting. So that's been a lot of fun. And Kevin's one of the fun guys to talk with because he'll tell you about his branch. But I was part of the men's department, and he, in the Navy. It is what it is. So I'll kick it back to Jimmy, and then he can introduce Kevin, I guess.
All right. Before we introduce Kevin, Tifton, what was your first job when you got out of the Marines, and how long did it take you to find your permanent home or your next big career?
Yeah, well, I got out and went to school immediately. I was enlisted in the Marine Corps, active. So whenever I got out, I went to school, and then I found Office Pride as part of a business internship. I went to business school, so I needed an internship, and then started at Office Pride as a paid intern, and then was brought on full time after I graduated. So Office Pride and franchising is what I got into right after the Marine Corps.
Okay, so even like for Marines, that's exceptionally well. But for any exiting and transitioning veteran, being able to have that type of strategy going in is awesome, and that's definitely a well-planned story. So Kevin, give us your intro, and then tell us what your first job was and how long it took you to find your permanent spot.
Well, I was in the Navy back in the late 80s, early 90s and stuff. Went on several deployments, did the whole Desert Storm thing, spent 10 months over there. That was a lot of fun. I joined the military right out of high school, went to the military, thought I'd go for 4 years and come home and go to college and all that stuff. And I came home, got a good job right away, union job, went to work, and had that for about 6 years. And then I went into telecom for 20 plus years.
Okay.
I've been a franchisee. I've been a franchisee for 6 years. We just celebrated 6 years in business.
Okay.
So, and that was, that was tough. But the smart ones that left the Navy, we just jumped right into the workforce because we knew that we had to make a living right away. I couldn't go to college, all that good stuff. So,
gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I joined the Air Force right when I turned 18. I was in like Kevin. I thought or Tipton. I thought I was going to get out after my 4-year mark, and I started going to college, and so I wanted to be a civil servant, and I wanted to work I wanted to be a teacher and teach English in Japan on military installations. And that's kind of what I thought I wanted to do. Ended up staying in 12 and a half years, ended up getting my bachelor's in healthcare management. My first job when I got out of the Air Force, I was a bouncer at a bar in Manhattan Beach. Because my last deployment was overseas, I got hazardous duty pay and flight pay, and didn't have any place to spend it. So I had a lot of money saved up when I got out of the Air Force. So I ended up getting recruited to work at a hospital shortly after that, and I lasted 3.5 months, and then started a digital marketing agency that I ran for 11 years, and got into franchising about 18 years ago, and now we have a software company. So not as awesome and quick and precise as Tifton, but more along the lines of Kevin, kind of bumped along and ended up finding my way. And if I would have known what I know now about franchising, I would have never started my own business. And so that's, I think, a great segue into what we're going to be talking about today. We already introduced Kevin, so we're already cruising along. We're going to provide an overview of franchising for our veterans. We're going to discuss some of the benefits and challenges in franchising and explain why it's a great fit and show you what to look for when considering investing in a franchise. And we're going to go through some resources and tools. So there's 3 paths to business ownership. You can build one from scratch, which I did, and I do not recommend. You can buy an existing franchise, which is, obviously something that you can buy an existing business rather. It could be a franchise that's already existing, which is a very popular thing, or just buying an existing business, non-franchise. Or you can borrow a proven concept, which is franchising. Franchising, it's a business model that, you've seen across every type of industry, more than 120 industries and 300 different business lines. And growing up, I always thought, franchises were mostly just the big McDonald's and the big food brands, but there's so many there's about 4,300 different franchises. Like smash my trash. There's a franchise for almost anything that you can think of, and I'm sure you see them, on the signs everywhere you go. So we're going to talk about a couple key terms. Franchisor. A franchisor is a brand that lends their trademark and trade name and business system, as well as provides training and ongoing assistance to the franchisee. And a franchisee is like Kevin, who pays an initial fee for the right to do business under the franchisor's name and system, as well as Kevin provides an ongoing royalty for continued support to the franchisor. Tifton, why don't you run through this different range of franchising and just kind of let people know the different types of concepts out there?
Yeah, absolutely, Jimmy. And, I kind of feel bad because I'm the only one that took shots at the other branches. So just need to clarify that I do love the Air Force and the Navy, and I especially love Kevin, known him a while. So I need to clarify that before my conscience takes me out of this call. So anyways, from a range of things, it almost ranges also from like the high level of financial investment all the way down to the lower level of financial investment as well here, at least on this chart, where you have something where you're going to be in a building. If you're building a 7-Eleven, I can imagine. I haven't seen the item 7 or the item 5 in the 7-Eleven FDD, Jimmy, but I'm sure that there's probably a lot of different things that you're going to have to pay for to build something like that, right? Millions of dollars of investments, all the way down to a business where you've got a business like ours, where we fit in the more mobile or home-based business, where you're not having to build out a building.
Sure.
And then there's everything in between, right? You've got food franchises, which is all that I knew of whenever I started working for Office Pride. I thought the McDonald's and Chicken Salad Chick and all of those were franchises, but I didn't realize that there was a chiropractor franchise, a cleaning franchise, a medical billing franchise, a cruise planning franchise. So it ranges very widely. Some of them are home-based, some of them are going to be virtual, like what's outlined here. And I know I've kind of been all over your chart, but there's just so many different types of franchises within that range. And then also the investments are going to range pretty widely as well.
Very true. Thank you. Here's a couple of franchise systems that you may not have known were founded by veterans. Burger King, more than 20,000 locations worldwide. They've done both founders were Navy veterans and Army veterans. H&R Block, Henry and Richard, could you imagine, flew 32 combat missions as a navigator on a B-17, and anybody that knows anything about the military knows that milestone is an incredible milestone. They actually changed. They spelled their name just a little bit different when they made made H&R Block, and the H&R stands for Henry and Richard. Conrad Hilton, a lot of time in World War I, after World War I. Sonic, which I didn't know, but the name Sonic came from an Army Air Corps veteran, and service with the speed of sound is their trademark. And I never knew until recently. A friend of mine, a mentor, Jack Child, told me about where the history of the name came from. Colonel Sanders was a liar. He was not a colonel, but he was a private in the Army, and he lied to get in at the age of 17. And he's holding a lot of secrets, Colonel Sanders. I mean, he held those 11 herbs, and nobody knows what those 11 herbs and spices are either. So he was pretty good with military secrets, apparently. Friendly's Ice Cream, both Mr. Curtis, both brothers served time in the U.S. Army during World War II. So a lot of different concepts out there, a lot of them that were started by veterans. So we are all in really, really good company. Kevin, why don't you run through some of the successful habits and why veterans are great and why we should consider franchising?
Well, I think as a veteran, I think we all share some of the same attributes. By the time you get out of the service, I think you know what a good leader looks like versus a bad leader. And that's one of the things that I carried through my entire career was trying to separate myself from some of the bad leaders. So being a good team leader and everything, obviously, are the ones that got promoted quickly through the service and everything. And obviously, you have to understand what it looks like to work inside of a system, because being an individual is great, but in the military and even in franchising, if you want to blaze your own path, sometimes franchising may not be for you, because especially if you're in a system that's been around as long as like Office Pride has been, where it is proven to be a successful system. If you can follow these steps, you will become successful.
Yeah.
So the thing that I always tell everybody is, if you're thinking about becoming a franchisee, you need to be optimistic and you need to be tenacious. You have to get up every day and go chase down your dream, whatever your why is, for the reason why you want to start your own business. That's really important. And look for those businesses out there that want to do business with veterans.
Yeah.
They're not hard to find. A little bit of work on the internet, it's a wonderful thing. And that's what I did when I first started out, is I was looking for veteran-friendly businesses, faith-friendly businesses, just a good business model to follow. So that's the biggest thing that I did in the beginning when I was kind of working through what I wanted to do after I left the corporate world.
Interesting. I wonder, it would be really neat to understand, and then some of these statistics you can find, but some of them are pretty obscure. It'd be really interesting to know, when people start looking for a franchise business, how far away they get from their MOS or what they did in the military. Last weekend, I had the privilege of attending a master's class with Pepperdine University here in Southern California, and they were charged with doing research about veterans, about transitioning veterans, and what age groups and what ranks and how far they were in their journey. And the people that were in the class that were veterans, I asked them again what I asked you guys, what their first job was and how long it took them to find their kind of forever career. And it's really interesting and different every time. One guy was he did hydraulics and mechanic on helicopters, and he now works for a company, and he does diesel hydraulics on heavy equipment. So very similar, work as far as like equipment and hydraulics. And then another guy who worked on Red Flag, and all he did was build things in the Army Air Corps, and he ended up going into hospital management. So it's just really interesting how people, what range people change. What never changes is the amount of grit and determination that veterans, pull in during their time in service. I will do transition assistance programs, and I will do coaching. And one of the first things I ask when they get there, because most people are in there 4 to 6 years, they've never had a different job. This is their first job. They've never done resumes. They've never done interviews. And can be a very scary time. And I ask everybody, who here, raise your hand if you picked your first duty assignment. I'd say, raise your hand if you picked your first boss. Raise your hand if you picked the people you work with. Raise your hand if you were given a piece of equipment and it always worked. And obviously probably the Marines more than anybody, they have to do more with much, much less than any other branch. And all of this, and you still have to get the job done. And you get the job done because you kind of have no choice. And that forced, work ethic and that grit and determination, it translates. So if I can give anybody any advice when you're thinking about venturing out post-military service into a entrepreneurial adventure, know that you have and are bringing with you a ton of grit, determination, moxie, being away from your family and your support and being thrown into the mix and having to survive on your own, with a new team and create a new team and create, relationships in a new way. Going into business is a cakewalk compared to a lot of the things that people have had to put up with in the military and strive through. So that's that end of that soapbox. So let's jump into this fact. Tifton, why don't you summarize this slide here a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, just the IFA, right? The phenomenal research they do showing that the percentage of veterans in the population is 7%, but 14% are franchise owners. 14% of the franchise owners are veterans, right? So that's a pretty telling statistic that this is an industry that veterans can thrive in. And I think it's a lot of those same reasons that you mentioned, Jimmy. I mean, I was actually a helicopter mechanic and crewman in the Marine Corps. Okay. And my first job after the service had nothing to do with mechanics or, it's the figure outedness, it's the tenacity, it's the things that you mentioned that are successful in business, right? You can take those things from any MOS and apply them. And then the other point about veteran franchisees hire veterans over 30% more than non-veteran franchisees. So it's not only a place where you can get into it and probably be more successful because we've seen a track record of more veterans coming into franchising. They wouldn't be doing that if they weren't having success. But you're also creating more opportunity for veterans that are getting out who don't have the financial means to be able to open a business or maybe aren't courageous enough to take that step yet. You can create more opportunity for them and honestly probably see those other veterans in a different light, right? Whereas, you see a guy who might be having some PTSD stuff going on, but it's not too severe. The world might look at them like they're broken, but you understand what they're going through. Yeah. And you can help them with a hand up and make a positive impact on them. So it's not just about how we can be successful, but it's also how we can make the other people around us successful as well.
I love that. Then this is a question for, oh my gosh, I had a question. This is a question for both of you guys. I had it and I lost it, and it was a really good one. I think it related to hiring within, and Kevin, you spoke to this. You actually were seeking a franchise that was veteran friendly. How did you, do you guys have other veterans that are within? Okay, here's my question. Now I remember. Thank you very much. The smoke is burning over here. How long after, when I first got out, I was 30 when I got out. So it's 29 years ago. So when I got out of the service, I really didn't miss being in the military for quite some time. And then when I got into franchising, then I started connecting with veterans that were in franchising, and it brought my two worlds, my love of franchising and my love of the veteran community, back in such a big way. So my question for both you, Kevin and Tifton, after you left the military, did you guys immediately kind of reconnect with other military veterans? How long did it take for you, and what was your journeys like?
Well, I stayed in contact with several of my buddies from the military since I got out. And,
Okay.
A couple of them came to Oklahoma, actually. One came to become a helicopter pilot, and they lived with us for a little while.
Okay.
But I stayed in touch with them, and it was actually one of my veteran buddies that I served with that when I took a huge buyout from my company in 2018 and left the corporate world. That's whenever I was talking to him. He was a franchise consultant, actually.
Okay.
And Office Pride was not in his suite that he offered, but we had discussed, these are the things that I knew I didn't want to go back to the corporate world to keep working. So those contacts that I had in the military ended up being a huge part of why I ended up at Office Pride, as we started looking into veteran friendly franchises and doing our due diligence up front, that everybody's going to have to do just when you're just starting to ask questions and everything.
Okay.
So that was huge for me. And but when you first get out of the military, you almost don't want to fall back on that. And my opinion is you should use that in everything that you do. Your first job you're looking for, make sure they know that you're a veteran.
Yeah.
Just because sometimes we downplay our role or what we may have done while we were in the service. But it gives you things that the normal layperson out there, they think automatically that, hey, you can do when things get tough, you're just going to go right through it, and the tenacity you need to do some of the trivial things that you have to do at any job. So even in franchising, especially, I mean, you have to have that ability to grind through the tough days. And in the military, if you've served a tour in the military, you can do that. The monotonous stuff, you can do all that. And to an employer or to a franchisor that's looking to vet possible franchisees, they want to see that too. Yeah.
Tifton, give us your 2 cents on your military reconnection after leaving the military. Did you run away from it, or did you keep close to it?
I couldn't run away from it, Jimmy. I similar to Kevin, I never stopped. Of course, there were some of the people that I didn't stay in as contact with as some of the others, right? You had some guys that were your roommates in Afghanistan, and some guys who you just didn't connect with as much. Didn't mean you didn't love them, but always stay connected to those guys. And then we have some local veteran communities around where I live that I was involved with. So it's just, I don't think it's something that's healthy to get away from personally. At least for me, it's always good. Like just an example is like whenever I was originally with Office Pride, I wasn't in the development role. So even though Kevin and I started at Office Pride around the same time, I didn't know Kevin until our first franchise owners retreat that I went to. And I think it was Nashville where we met Kevin. And I didn't know Kevin from Adam. I'd heard his name before and supported him on the franchise. We do a billing service for our owners. So I think I'd supported him there, but it was like we had known each other for decades, right? Because, you both go through that shared experience. And I think that connecting with veterans is just a healthy thing to do, especially if you have gone on tours or been in service for any extended period of time, right? If you bought in and really cared about your service to the country, I think that it's something about, Jimmy, you and I haven't known each other for a long time, but we've already cracked a few jokes. And I feel like that
for sure
it'd be great to have a cup of coffee with you, man. Like, it's
agreed. Yeah.
and anybody on this call, right? It's just fun to talk to veterans. It's my favorite thing about my job. That's why I reached out to you and Wendy a while back, just to try to find ways that we could get more connected, because I love talking to vets and just hearing about their experience in service, and hearing about what God's doing in their life and what they want to do next, and how Office Pride maybe could be a solution to that. But if it's not Office Pride, then it's something, right? And I love to be a part of helping them find what that is.
And Kevin was your franchise consultant. Was he a military veteran as well?
Yeah, I served with him. I served with him for 2 years.
Okay.
He got out a little bit after I did, but yeah, we became buddies, you know, on a deployment, and we've been friends ever since. So, and I mean, I got out way back in '93, right? I mean, so that friendship has lasted for a really long time.
As they do. Yeah.
And every time we deployed with a battalion of Marines. So when Tiff and I met, I knew how to talk to him. You know, you got to slow it down. You got to make real short sentences. I mean, I understand, you know, that kind of stuff, that kind of stuff that you learn in boot camp, you know, how to deal with all these guys and how to deal with your brothers and everything, you know, that never goes away to this day, you know. Even walking through a restaurant or something, some guy with an army hat or whatever, you know, you just slap him on the back and and he knows right away.
Yeah. Does Office Pride, do you guys have like a separate veteran like task force within Office Pride?
As far as the task force, we don't have anything set up like that. You know, our team has been going through, that'd be something I'd love to establish in the future, to be honest with you. But we've been going through all kinds of change here, really positively, I believe, with a lot of new people coming on board and bringing on new systems to help our owners grow faster. So that's probably something that'll come a little later. I think that as far as from the HQ team, I'm the one who's kind of spearheading a lot of the veteran engagement initiatives. But we have always been a 5-star member with VetFran, and
yes, sir.
Always offered a really substantial discount off our franchise fee for vets. So that's something where it's important to me and to us that we represent the veteran community really strongly. You know, there's you know who your veterans are within the organization as well. So there's that community within the franchise community, and every franchise brand is like that. Some have a very publicized separate, you know, group. Many times it's just when people go to convention, all the veterans get together and they have special, you know, events and stuff within annual conferences and stuff like that. So it's pretty neat. When COVID occurred, there were millions of businesses that were not doing great to begin with that ended up, you know, shuttering their doors. We know a lot of franchise businesses that you know, that definitely suffered. There were much fewer businesses that shut down that were franchise businesses because of some of the power within groups. So a lot of restaurants offered to-go food, takeout food, immediately when COVID hit. And what that took was having a strong supply chain. So they were able to order all of the to-go stuff. They were able to adjust software to do online ordering. So they were able to make these, you know, the most popular word in 2020 was pivot. And they were able to, you know, make that pivot and that adjustment because of the strength of the brand, because of the supply lines, because of the purchasing power, and because of the value that the brands and the community, you know, required and needed those franchise systems. So we're going to talk a little bit more about franchising strength, but this is the franchising model is a tried and true system. And if you think about needing support, you can see in these areas how much powerful a franchise business is, because again, you are in business, it is your own business, but you're not in it by yourself.
Some of the challenges to franchising, just going to rip through some of these obvious ones. If you come into a franchise and you think, you know what, I think the logo could be, I think Office Pride should be, it should be a different color. You may not be a good fit for franchising. A dear old friend of mine used to use this analogy. If you like to go swimming and you want to swim naked in your pool, then maybe you should build your own pool and not go to the municipal pool and get in a lot of trouble. And that's kind of how franchising is. If you can follow along the plans and understand that, a franchise business has done this 80, 100 different times. They kind of know what they're doing. If you can come in and follow a plan, franchising is definitely for you. Sometimes people don't like a franchise agreement term. The term is usually 10 years. How long is your franchise agreement, guys?
10 years.
10 years. Okay. So, you're transitioning out of the military. You may say, you know what? I don't know if I want to sign up for another 10 years with somebody that I may not know, really, really well. So if that is a concern, then that's something you need to be aware of.
Well, and I'll interject this, Jimmy, even with the term piece, a lot of people find safety in that as well, because they have a 10-year term. So that way they know the franchisor isn't going to change anything in their contract or in their brand for that 10-year period, right? If there's going to be a change in a fee, or there's going to be a change in anything, right? It won't affect you until your renewal comes up. And also, you technically could get out earlier if you do a good job building your business and have a sellable asset. You could be like what you said earlier, Jimmy. You could be a resale business where you find a local person that wants to buy your business. So you do have a little bit more control versus, it sounds like all three of us went in. I turned 18 and was in recruit training 2 months later. So we signed the dotted line. It was 5 years for me. And if I leave, then I go to jail for a long time. That's not how franchising is.
That's that other non-benefit. So really quick, in the chat this time, well, that's okay. We don't need to leave it in the chat. What we found when we were doing our study over the weekend at Pepperdine is when people are retiring and they're looking for another option, you literally have 10 or 15 years ish. The average retirement age for the average retirement age is 43 years old for enlisted and 46 for an officer. So you're 43 years old. You're looking for your next, what do I do for 10, 15 years until my Social Security kicks in? What do I do? So you want to build a business, you want to build, grow, and sell a business. And so you need to have your exit plan in mind. Like if you're looking for a franchise right now, you need to say, what do I want to do at the end of that 10 years? Do I want to sign up for another 10 years? Do I want to give it to my kids, or do my kids want to be an influencer now instead of joining the business? What is your plan at the end of that 10 years? And then build your business according to what that plan is. If you want to build it, grow it, and then have another retirement nest egg, then build and think about your business with your exit in mind. Nothing more important than that. So
that was a huge thing for me whenever we started looking at franchises, was because you can say in 10 years, I want to have $1 million business or a multi-million-dollar business. Okay, but how am I going to get there? If you're going to go out on your own and open up a company of any kind, how are you going to get there?
Yes.
So for me, that was huge because they had the path lined out. And in those preliminary talks and stuff, as you're going through all this vetting process, that was part of the deal, was this is what you can expect. And for me, that was huge on the go with a franchise column.
And if you think it's weird to talk about your exit plan before you're ready to break ground, you're wrong. You need to think about what your exit plan is going to be, because when you determine what your exit plan is, that is also helping you on this slide determining what your risk level is. So let's say you're looking at franchising, and you want to understand what type of system you want to have. So do you have the risk tolerance to invest $500,000 into a brick and mortar food concept? Or do you have a home-based business that has a territory where your workers, let's say it's a Mosquito Joe's, and your crew meets at the storage where your equipment is, or landscape, or garage floor resurfacing. So there's that type of mid-level risk tolerance. Then there is the home-based, online, non-territory, like a travel franchise. And each one of those has a risk tolerance, and each one of those has, investment levels. So once you determine what your risk tolerance is, we're going to come back to that in a minute. So the franchise disclosure document, I don't know how many people are familiar with the FDD. It is a document managed and ran by the Federal Trade Commission. Every one of the 4,300 plus franchise systems has an FDD with 23 items, and each item, like every franchise, has an item 5 or an item 20. So items 5, 6, and 7 outline your initial fees, other fees, and estimated initial investment to start the business. Item 20 is the outlets and franchisee information. So it tells you how many units have been sold, how many have been opened, and then how many have been terminated or transferred or resold. Now, and it's over the last 3 years. So one of the most important metrics that you can ever understand is how many units are sold versus how many are open. So if they're saying that they're selling 20 units a year, but they're only opening 2 or 3, that's a huge red flag and something to review and understand and be cautious of. In that same note, finding out how many expansions there are, and an expansion is somebody like Kevin expanding into new territories, additional territories. The amount of expansion from within a brand is one of the most valuable metrics that lets you understand about franchisee satisfaction. So if you're looking for a brand, look at item 20 and see how many locations are being opened versus sold and what their expansion rate is. Item 21 are more financial statements, and we're going to talk about item 19 a little bit. Item 19 is a financial performance representation. Tifton, do you guys have an item 19?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Will you talk really quickly about what the item 19 does?
Yes. So as Jimmy mentioned previously, the Federal Trade Commission has their hands in this to keep people from taking advantage of others, right? To make sure that we're operating above reproach. And the item 19 allows the franchisor to be able to share financial numbers with a potential franchisee in a safe way. You know, there are things that all kinds of different things around it where if we don't list a certain metric, it cannot be discussed previous to becoming a franchise owner, at least not by us. So you don't necessarily have to be alarmed if you're looking at an emerging brand that doesn't have an item 19 yet. Maybe they don't have enough data to put it together, because you'll get to be able to get those questions answered whenever you do something called validate, which I'm sure Jimmy probably will maybe go over on this call. If not, you'll have a chance to talk to franchise owners. In the back of the FDD, there's going to be franchise owners information. You know, Kevin's information is in the back of our FDD. It's part of the requirements around Federal Trade Commission. So if someone got our FDD online or they got it from us, they could call any franchise owner they want and ask these financial questions to. But the item 19 is where we list all of our gross sales numbers, because we have fully audited and verified numbers of all the invoicing that our franchise owners do system-wide. We can't just pick and choose. You know, we can't just show Kevin's stuff and then not show Cindy's over here in this other market who's not doing so well. Okay. So that way we look better, right? That's why the Federal Trade Commission got their hands in it, because franchisors were doing that. We have to show what the low is, what the high is. Right. We can break it down by quartile. We can show you what the average is versus the median. Those are a lot of things that we'll share with you what's going on within the brand and financially how franchise owners are doing. And it's in our system specifically, it's based on per territory, not based on per owner. So
Okay.
if an owner owns multiple territories, you can't see how much they make in total, but you can see on average what the territories are doing. But every brand has different different disclosures, right? And
Yeah.
Jimmy's showing some of that now, but
Okay.
that's overall what an item 19 is.
Wonderful. So, Kate, we're going to look at this slide here, and don't freak out. I know that we just had 7 people leave. I'm just kidding. But this spreadsheet here is a summary of why franchising is the most amazing and best business opportunity, is because of the ability to research and investigate the health of a brand and for you to make your choice known. So item 5, 6, and 7, it's your initial franchise fee, your other fees, an estimated initial investment range to open the door. Some brands have an item 19, some brands don't, and that's okay. So brand 1, 2, and 3, let me back up a little bit. Brand 1, 2, and 3 is like a non-territory home-based online business. So there's no item 19. So your investment break-even point down at the bottom is undetermined. And this is a travel franchise. And a lot of people that get a travel franchise are just looking for vacation, discounts on vacations, and they'll book stuff for their friends. So but there's a lot of people that do treat it as a serious only business, not just a side hustle. Brand number 2 is what we talked about. It's like a home-based but territory-based, service type franchise. They have an item 19, and it's $450,000 average unit volume. And then the details will tell you what it is, how long it requires to make your investment break-even point. And then brand 3 is a brick and mortar. I can't remember what concept it is, but it's a brick and mortar business. So it has a $1.2 million average unit value, but you're looking at the high end, $1 million investment. So it takes 5+ years to get your investment back. So once you kind of determine what your risk tolerance is, you can start getting into the weeds. And if you just think about everything that's on this sheet, you know what your fees are. You know what the financial performance is. Looking at item 20, you see what their growth is. Each one of these has a positive franchise growth in store openings, not just stores sold. And then you can do subsets of that data and see, I can't remember what item it is. I think it might be an item 21. Kevin or Tifton, let me know. But is there any litigation that is open for the brand? I don't remember where that is.
That's item 4. Yeah.
Item 4. Okay, so item 4. You can look at
3 or
item
4. Litigation and bankruptcy are 3 and 4. So
okay. So
yep.
Both bad things, and they're there and they're evident, and it is in black and white. In parallel to item 20, you can ask the franchisor for names and contact info for current franchisees, as well as franchisees that have exited the system. Plus, you can go in your local area and call a franchisee and say, hey, I'm thinking about joining. Can I meet with you? And so the amount of information that is on here, not only can you largely research what your break-even point is, you can find out what the community thinks about the brand by looking at reviews. You can see litigation, any legal issues, fees, performance. So you can basically build a plan. And let's say you whittle this down and you find what your risk tolerance is, then you go find Office Pride and their 2 main competitors, and you run them through this spreadsheet. And you look in here, and now you compare apples to apples to apples and find out which brand, Office Pride, is going to be your best choice when looking at all of this information. So if you can, and you don't need anybody else to help you determine this. You do want a franchise attorney. not a bankruptcy attorney, not a divorce attorney, but you want a franchise attorney to go through this after you do your research. Because the more research you do, the more detailed and the better time spent for your attorney. Don't throw 5 choices at your attorney. Do your due diligence, so then the time that you spend with a franchise attorney is spent on the details. I think we've kind of talked a lot about some of these questions. Kevin, rip through some of these questions, because you're the guy that went through this. So run through some of these questions and feel free to add any of your own to it.
So item 7 for me on the FDD was a huge deal too, because I wanted to know how much cash I really needed on hand for that first year, beyond the franchise fee, beyond that initial investment, to really get my business up and running, because I can't work out of my house. I mean, I went to the office for a long time, so I wanted to know on the high side, what was that investment really going to look like my first year, and that was huge for me. I always hit on the goal thing. I've always been a goal guy. And through the franchise process, that was a huge piece of it, because the franchisor really wants you to come up with these goals, because that's the reason why you're going to open your own business. Is I feel like I can reach my goals that I want to have before I turn 60. I can get to those goals faster working for myself than I could working for a corporation. And because it's all on me, right? And I never question my work ethic or my ability to grind through to get through the plateaus of owning a business. And so that for me was a huge thing, is that they force you to go through that routine of, let's find those big, hairy, audacious goals that you want in your future.
I love that.
Not in a year. What do you want it to look like in 10 years?
Right.
Because in the corporate setting, especially, you kind of got the blinders on, and you're just, this is the goal for the next 8 months.
Right.
So that to me, that was huge. And just touching on the community, to me, that was one of the surprising things of the franchise. I knew I was going to get some support from headquarters and all that other stuff. Office Pride to me is a little unique, because the ownership support is crazy. And I learned that from the very beginning when I did just that. I Googled Office Pride in Oklahoma and called the owner and just said, hey, will you talk to me? And everybody without fail, they're like, absolutely. I will help you get through what you need to get through. And that was big for me. That was big. And then, if you're worried about whether you can do this every day, day in, day out, if you're going to buy and run your own business, I wear Office Pride shirt every day, Monday through Sunday. Next one in the closet gets put on.
All right.
Because it's not what I do anymore. Right.
Yeah.
It's now become, this is my business.
Yeah.
And in Tulsa, Oklahoma, if you say Office Pride, that's me. So I 100% have drank the Kool-Aid, and I am bought in that. I mean, and that's why Tiffany and I get along so well. And that's one of the reasons why I do this. And I love it when prospective franchisees call me and ask me, and I'm brutally honest about the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm brutally honest about the good stuff too, because it is owning a business, and the day-to-day looks better than what you can read on a piece of paper. So, and then in my opinion, why some franchises have failed and everything else is, like I kind of touched on before. If you can't follow the directions, if you want to do something differently, franchising may not be for you.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And a failed franchise, and you talk to an exiting, franchisee, just because that franchise failed, it may not have anything to do with the brand. It may not even have anything to do with the franchisee. Like a closed location, a terminated location could mean that they, they had a family issue. It could be they were just tired and they ended up selling their business. It doesn't have to have a negative connotation, but talking to people that have exited the system and finding out why they exited, because they may have exited for a reason that you may be thinking about. So it's really good to be able to talk to people about the business. And that's one of those things you just can't do in any business. Tifton, let's run through some of the keys to franchise success from what you've seen from your side.
Yeah, I mean, this first bullet point here is crucial. I mean, the number one reason any businesses fail in America is because people go into them undercapitalized. And that's whether you go into it in franchising or business for yourself, right, Jimmy? You open your own business. I'm sure you probably experience this. Not that you failed, but it always takes a little bit more than you think. Especially if you're going into it and you look at the low end of the investment, you're like, "Ooh, I'm just going to be on the low end, or if I have just a little less than that, I can make it work." It's like, no, that item 7's there for a reason, right? And if you don't have that money, it's not that people want your money. That's not the goal. The goal is that you're successful in the long run. And the last thing you need to do is start a business whenever you're undercapitalized. And then the next thing you know, you have to take a job going back to corporate America after you've already invested $60,000 of your own money into a business that's not going to succeed anymore because you don't have any more time to put into it.
Yeah.
And that is where, I almost said this earlier, but if people like myself in the franchise development position at the HQ of the brand are doing a good job, and the people that are considering the opportunity are being authentic and transparent with the brand, then this stuff shouldn't happen, right? We should be giving a clear understanding of how much capital they need. And if somebody's hiding something or trying to make themselves look like they have more than they need, they're only hurting themselves in the long run, right? Franchise brands don't want, we want something for our owners. We don't want something from our owners. And that's, where the system comes into play, right? There's a system in place, like Kevin's talked about probably 10 times now, that has been proven. We know how not to do it. We've seen people, we've been in franchising for 30 years. So we've seen plenty of ways how it doesn't work. And if we're asking owners to do it away, that's because we know it works. And if we're telling them that we're testing out something new to help advance the system, then we'll be honest about that. Hey, do you want to be a part of a pilot program, right? That's something that a good franchisor, in my opinion, should be doing. Like there should be new and innovative ways to help our owners continue to grow being implemented. But that should be clear, right? There should be systematic things. These things that we know work. These are things that we're testing. These are the things we know do not. And and that's where veterans, I think, really fit in well, right? I actually missed a lot after I left. I missed having my staff sergeant and my gunny because I felt like it's not that they were the voice of God, but if I listened to them, oh man, I could be successful. I could be promoted. I could have a great time in my day. I have a lot of freedom in my time. And if I didn't, oh man, it was going to be bad. Right.
Yeah.
But at least it was clear.
That's
and
right.
Franchising provides clarity for people where entrepreneurship is really fun and exciting, and it's got its ups and its downs, as Kevin talked about, but it's also a really unclear space, right? And that's why you see a lot of the people that have done it on their own be kind of like out there individuals, right? You look at the Elon Musks of the world, they're kind of a little crazy too, right? So like it's definitely something where that system, the capital, I mean, you're creating culture. Those are things that I think Kevin can talk about way better than me, right? The things that have been successful. But one thing I will speak on is I think that franchisors don't talk about the community of other franchise owners enough, because sure, we have a system. Sure, we have a lot of things that are going to help our owners, but it's nothing like looking over your shoulder and seeing a guy who's literally going through the exact same thing as you or just went through it, and they can tell you exactly how they made it through, right? So that community of people that are doing it with you, like if you go into a CrossFit gym or an Orange Theory Fitness, you're going to pay a lot more to go there than if you go to the Y or to Crunch or to Gold's Gym. But I promise you're going to have better results. Right? Because you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with somebody doing the same class, following the same system. There's accountability, there's inspiration, there's all of these things. And for me, that's what makes franchising so good for vets, because I feel like we are literally hardwired to live in that type of environment.
Yeah.
And just having that knowledge base at your disposal as a new business owner takes so much of the stress out of owning a business, because you know if something pops up tomorrow that you had no idea was coming, you know one of the 100 and whatever franchise owners in your system, somebody has done that. Somebody's gone through it. And
Sure.
that same thing falling back on your military thing, right? I mean, nothing new really ever popped up, right? It was a known problem. Somebody knew about it.
Right.
So we could always tackle it together. And for me, that was huge whenever we came into the system and everything, is that you had that. I mean, the first time we went to a retreat, there were guys giving me cards everywhere. It's like, dude, I've been doing this for 15 years. So anything pops up, just call me.
It's the neatest, a franchise, it's kind of like joining a unit that you volunteered to join, that you're, you know, happy about, and you go, like, there's these retreats, there's different task forces, there's being in a beta for a new program. These are all things, and they're all performance based. You go to an annual conference, you've got opportunities to win Rookie of the Year, and you get to be mentors, you get to be a mentee. And there's so many things that bring a franchise group together. Franchising, and if you think about the history of franchising, some of the building blocks of franchising were all veterans. So they bring in their military acumen and systems. They bring in leadership principles. They brought in award systems. They brought in peer recognition. They brought in management style training. Franchising has a lot of military roots and a lot of military acumen. And so it's no surprise that veterans do so well in it, because so many of the building blocks for franchising all have military roots, because the military systems work. I mean, I don't know a franchise system that makes you cut your hair, you know, when you first start, but I don't know, maybe that's something, maybe Gordon Logan from Sport Clips may want to start doing that. I don't know, but there's so many similarities to military from an operational standpoint. I mean, sorry, for franchising, from an operational standpoint, it's no wonder franchising is successful, because a lot of the military acumen that's there. So we are about at our time. I don't see any other questions here. Sharitha, we will reach out to you if you're interested in franchising your business. Like I said, there's a franchise for that, and Wendy or I will contact you and get you some information on that. I'm sorry, I think that was Geneva. Sorry about that. And I think we got all of the other questions answered. Stephen asked a question. Let me see if I can turn that on. Allow to talk. All right, Stephen, welcome. And I think you're on mute. Okay. You need to unmute, and you should be ready to go.
Hey, yeah, this is I'm Stephen Roberts. I'm with the Veterans Business Outreach Center for Florida.
Awesome. Thank you for attending. Thank you
And
very
I just
much.
have enjoyed your presentation so much. It really, I learned a lot. But we do presentations to veterans who are transitioning out of the military, as well as returning back and doing reboots. So you're maybe familiar with our program, but we would love to have you join us sometime.
Oh, would love to. Would definitely love to. I will. Wendy is on the call as well, and I know you probably know Wendy. I'm guessing
Yes.
she invited you.
She does just does an excellent job for us.
Oh, Wendy is she's one of my personal favorites. Yes, sir. Okay. Well,
thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And where in Florida are you?
Well, we're stationed out of Panama City at Gulf Coast State College.
Okay.
So we cover all of the entire state of Florida.
Okay.
So we go all the way down to Homestead, as well as to Jacksonville, cover all the areas.
Wonderful. Tifton, Kevin, what do you guys have any veterans in Stevens area?
Yeah, no veteran owners there. We do have a franchise owner in Pensacola, not one
Okay.
station out of Panama City, though.
Okay.
That's awesome, Stephen. I'm in Palm Harbor, Tampa Bay area. So we'll be all together here in the hurricane season here soon.
What bases are close to you, Tifton? What's the closest base?
Closest base is McDill Air Force Base.
Okay.
There's a Coast Guard base down here as well, just not as big.
Okay.
I've been down there and done some of the transitioning military fairs with a partner of ours. We partner with Orion Talent, who's a military recruitment firm. They're
Oh, yeah.
So go on base and meet with the vets that are exiting service. And, really most of them haven't even heard of franchising, right? They don't even understand really a lot of it, right? They're all looking for jobs. They're looking for the next thing to get out. They think they're just going to roll to work from one man to the next. So it's a lot of educating, even though
Yes.
I'd love for them to be office bride owners. I feel like I'm just helping them get into the world of franchising, and then maybe it'll come 360 later.
Our mission working with the SBDCs and with the VBox is to introduce franchising as an option while people are going through those journeys. Like, bouncer to financial analyst to digital marketing agency owner was very bouncy for me, and a lot of people have those. We don't want anybody to waste their time. We want people to get to their next big deal as fast as possible. So we love the support through VBox, and we're really starting to ramp up and try to get more franchisees that are veterans to all the VBox to be able to share their story. So with that, thank you everybody for your time. We will be able to email everybody a copy of this pitch deck, as well as Stephen's personal cell phone. And I'm just kidding. We'll get the information out to everybody. And thank you all for attending. Kevin and Tifton, thank you very much for being on the panel with me. It was great meeting you guys.
Thanks, Jimmy.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care, everybody.